So with that being said, I do want to officially welcome you to day 2 of the HCI Inclusive Diversity Conference. And I also wanted to, as a partner of HCI, kind of give you a little bit of background, as to why I'm standing here before you as a DEI professional. I mentioned yesterday that I was asked to speak and was completely exhilarated and excited to be able to do that. And so wanted to really kind of give you a little bit of a background and explain that I do have a consulting company called Rework Work. And basically my role is to help companies with their talent acquisition strategies. Got into D&I through recruiting. And that is my passion, that is my love. I enjoy helping women and professionals of color, the disabled, LGBT, really get into jobs. And what I found was, as I was doing that as a recruiter back in the day, what was happening was I was having to do extra things to help women and to help professionals of color. I was having to jump through more hoops. And that frustrated me quite a bit. So I did want to reflect on a couple of things yesterday. I know that David Rock mentioned that the word bias is like disease, and that unconscious bias training doesn't work. And so I would say that I agree that we need to diagnose the type of bias that we're dealing with, just as medical professionals do diagnose the type of disease. But I would also add that unconscious bias training is necessary to raise awareness of behaviors that need to be addressed. The behavior is what's important. I believe that we need unconscious bias training, so much so that I did actually create unconscious bias training online. And I think that at this point, we have not progressed to the place that where awareness isn't needed. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here today, right? 20 years ago, D&I professionals thought that they were going to work themselves out of a job. Today, that's kind of laughable. My vision for the workplace is to create a culture where career success is no longer prohibited by gender, does not need to be measured by equality, and organically reflects diversity. But we are not there yet. To help us get there, my unconscious bias training course is on an online learning platform called lynda.com. Some of you may have heard of it, and it was purchased by LinkedIn. So I now have courses on unconscious bias and on diversity recruiting on both lynda.com and LinkedIn's online learning platform. So that's 2 great resources that are actually right there at your fingertips, which you may not have realized you already have access to. So that was my shameless plug for the day. But I do want to say that while unconscious bias training alone isn't helpful, Dr. Tony Byers yesterday mentioned that we have to create new habits. We have to combine the 2 together. So unconscious bias training helps you interrupt the unconscious behaviors, and it makes us stop and think. So my role within my consulting company is to help you to stop and think, because how do you develop those new habits? You have to interrupt the old behaviors. Before you post a job, do you stop and think? Before you make a job offer, do you stop and think? So I'd like you to stop and think about these 9 areas of talent acquisition and management. And so this is an infographic which you cannot read. I get that. I just wanted to show you what it looks like all together, because I'm going to go through them one by one. So I don't expect you to have to, you might be able to read these, but I wanted to go through these 9 areas because at Rework Work, we really insist upon making sure that these are being touched upon. And the first place is reputation management. So a lot of times when you think about hiring, the first thing you want to do is post a job and go hire. But have you thought about what it means to be an employer of choice? Have you thought about your reputation in the marketplace? Have you looked at the online reviews, and are you managing to that? Because those matter. Who's handling your marketing? Is recruiting working with marketing? And are they doing it, or are they siloed? Because a lot of times that happens, and marketing gets told at the last minute that recruitment is about to do a campaign. How are you doing a recruitment campaign without marketing? Also, are you looking at how your organization is perceived by your employees and not just by the vision that was defined by HR? So yesterday you heard about Textio. helps you to revise the job descriptions that may be biased or turning off women. And so that's in step 2. You really need to look at revising your job descriptions because research shows that the language makes a difference, and we know this. Recruiting talent, step 3, are you actively recruiting talent? And I say that, I don't want anyone to be offended. I asked you yesterday how many of you are in talent acquisition. Please don't come up to me later and be upset with me, but I have to say this. A lot of times, internal recruiters are waiting for people to apply online. They are not actively recruiting. So I call you waiters, not recruiters, right? You have to make sure that if you are a recruiter, that you are actively seeking people, that you are going out, you are talking to folks, and that when you are, especially in an environment, I've talked to quite a few people who say, hey, we don't have the diversity that we should, right? Our company has not been very open, and so now we're making a change. That's wonderful, but how do people know about it? If your door has been locked previously, now you suddenly expect that people are going to know that you're welcoming them. They won't know that. You have to actually unlock the door, open it wide, step outside, and welcome people in. And that is an active engagement. Step 4 is review your candidates. How are you screening, interviewing? What's happening in that process? Do you have standard processes? Is it standard across the board? Or are you allowing exceptions? Are you allowing the partner to walk in and say, yeah, I know we have this process, but we need to skip 3 steps and let so-and-so's son come in to interview? Every time you add an exception to your policy, you're putting holes in it, and your policies look like Swiss cheese. They need to be standardized, and then you actually need to stick to them. Of course, reducing bias is important in the selection and decision-making. We want to make sure that you're interviewing excuse me, is in an area where bias, that's where the bias can definitely creep in. And you want to make sure that you've got 2 in the pool. Yesterday we talked about board management and having at least 3 women on the board was important. In this area, 2 is usually enough because you need to have a comparison point. Otherwise, if you've only got 1, then once again, you've got somebody who looks like just a token. And this statistically will never, ever get through your recruitment process. We also talked about the fact that earlier this week was Equal Pay Day. And I asked yesterday, how many of you have done a compensation study? Really important to start looking at that, especially because in many of the states, they are actually enacting laws. We're in California. We know what the laws look like here, right? It's much more liberal than some of the other states. But you really need to be paying attention to this as well. And you got to be ready to receive. The onboarding is important because onboarding is where, that's the first real touch point of somebody changing from candidate to employee. How many of you are ready to receive your employees on day 1? How many of you actually have provided them with a space and a laptop and their team is there to welcome them? It sounds so simple, but I personally have been at a job where I walked in on day 1, they didn't know where they were going to assign me to sit. My manager wasn't there. I didn't have a laptop. What are you supposed to do? It's like, oh great, I guess were you expecting me today? So these are things that sound really simple, and this is such a great area, such a great touch point to be able to start to build engagement and welcoming and belonging from day 1. And we miss that opportunity so many times. We do it very poorly. And then, of course, offering resources. You want to be able to start developing people, engaging folks, and letting them take professional development courses. Are you feeding their inner selves and letting them bring themselves to work and letting them know that you actually want them to be better within your company? And then finally, removing roadblocks. Fair treatment, upward mobility, that's what we all want, right? And we're here today because we want to talk about how we can make our organizations better. The roadblocks to advancement are many. We've talked about quite a lot of them. I think that pink sourcing video yesterday was pretty hysterical, but also really true. And at the end of the day, that's kind of sad. So it's really important for us, if this is the role that we're taking, to think about what those roadblocks are and actively work to dismantle them. So I'm consistently using the word actively because it's so important that we do that. So as you bring new individuals into your organization, you got to remember that diversity may indeed bring creativity and innovation, but it also brings conflict. Respect in the workplace and conflict management training is probably something else that needs to be beefed up, because you've got to let your employees know that, hey, if we're doing this initiative and this is the way that we're going to go, conflict can be good, but we don't want to have conflict if we don't know how to manage it. The reason that conflict turns out to be bad is because we're not expecting it. We want everyone to play nice, and we really haven't thought about how to manage the conflict that is going to arise. But through conflict is where really great innovation and creativity can come out, but not if you are not handling that well. There's a phrase that says, you really should get comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think in D&I, we have to do that. We have to be able to teach those in our organizations how to sit in that state of discomfort and how to embrace that. So I have 3 daughters at home. We have 7, 14, and 16. And the youngest of whom is 7. She is a firecracker. She already told me that she should have been here because there were 2 beds in my room. And so she's like, I just don't understand why I'm not there. But what I really would like to be able to do, and I think I want to give her a shout out. And there's a video that's going to come later today that you'll think of this moment when you watch that video, but I don't want to give you a spoiler, but I do want to do a shout out for my daughter. So if you would all bear with me here for a moment, I'm going to do a quick selfie or a quick video, and I would love you all to say hi to my daughter, whose name is Naomi. Now, my other 2 daughters, my older daughters, would be embarrassed by this, so I'm not going to include them in this. I'm just doing this for the little one. But the other part of that, too, is that Naomi is such a firecracker, and she's still in the phase where she adores me. My other 2 are like, whatever. But the little one still loves me to death, and so I'm going to milk that for all it's worth. So on that note, I'm going to turn around here, and I'm going to do a selfie video, and I'm going to ask you all to say, hi, Naomi. All right, so let's do this. Okay, everyone, are you ready? Okay. 1, 2, 3. Hi, Naomi. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. She has decided that she wants to be a comedian, and then she wants to be president of the United States. So, so I would really appreciate it if you would all vote for her when she turns 35.